going to start this in a slightly different way. Hello, my name is Ed Smith. Kathy.
Hello, my name is Kathy McLean. So I think everybody is probably very familiar with Kate Granger, who sadly died at the weekend at the age of 34. And we thought we'd have a few moments of a tribute to Kate, rather than a silence, but we'll say a few words. You're probably all aware she was a consultant geriatrician, trained in Edinburgh, and she herself was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of cancer. And as a consequence of the way she was interacted with in her care settings, she set out a campaign which in many ways has changed the way we think and the way that people interact with patients and understand patient communication. She was diagnosed in 2011 and stopped her treatment in 2012, and actually lived a lot longer than was predicted at the time. And as I say, died at the weekend. She was awarded an MBE by the Queen last year, and the Queen is understood to have said to Kate that in her experience positivity equals longevity. Her campaign was, as I say, triggered by her own experience, and it started out with a now famous tweet in which she said, "Hello, my name is." And that has gone around not just this country but others as well, and she's had many thousands and thousands of followers both in healthcare and outside. She said at the launch of her campaign, "It's the first thing you are taught in medical school, that when you approach a patient you say your name, your role and what you're going to do. This missing link made me feel like I didn't really matter, that these people weren't bothered who I was. I ended up at times feeling like I was just a diseased body in a hospital bed." And I think when you look at the campaign over the last couple of years, it has changed that approach and has helped people to embrace that and help make them talk to patients in a way that they too would wish to be talked to. So at NHS Improvement we're honouring Kate ourselves with a bake sale which has been organised by Rachel Burnham in the Improvement team and our social committee. And this is also being picked up by the other arm's length bodies. So we're pleased that NHS England, HE and PHE over the coming months will also engage in this. And it includes a joint Just Giving website as well. So we wanted to pay this tribute to someone who, you know, hasn't cost any money really. It's been a great campaign, and we hope that the good work that she's done will live on in her memory.
Thank you. Let's keep that legacy alive in all that we do. Welcome and apologies from Aradazi and Bob. Welcome to Elizabeth, who's standing in for Bob, and a number of papers, and we look forward to that. Welcome to members of the public, and we will take questions on items in the agenda, as we normally do towards the end of the public session. Our next board meeting for colleagues is a board development session towards the end of September, where we're going to look at technology, data and the whole subject of digital. I have asked for the newly appointed CITO and CIO from NHS England and be working with us to join us at that development session, because I think that's particularly important. Are there any conflicts of interest that need to be reported other than those which are registered? Are there any items that colleagues would like unstarred that are currently starred on either agenda? One thing that I was aware of when I read all of the papers weekend and then I talked to Jim was the balance between the public agenda and the private agenda looks to be too weighted towards the private agenda. So I would like to see if we can adjust the balance at future meetings more to have more papers in the public agenda. And I'd also like to suggest, with your approval as we go through the papers, that some of the papers that are in the private agenda for this meeting may well or should go on our website immediately after, because I think they inform the public of the things that we're discussing and that they have a right to see. So if we go through that, I hope that has your general support, and we'll come back to the specifics during the course of the afternoon. Minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of May. Fair record. Thank you, Jessica, for those. There were quite a number of actions, and most of the actions seem to have papers for today. So I always like that, because that means that we're not forward, pushing them forward. That said, the first item, the relationship between partner bodies and partnership working.
It's on a long list of potential topics for board development sessions.
I would like to see a situation where we, perhaps in some of our subcommittees and our boards, I've asked before, we have Malcolm or Peter Wyman join us. Not the whole board, but I've been to Malcolm's board meetings, and I just think it's good practice to try and do that if we can a bit. So we will have a board development session, and we will have slightly against board to boards, because the ones that I've been to have been very formulaic, and I just think we need a conversation about real work and things we're doing. So we might find a way of doing it which is a more natural way of doing it. But if we can take forward invitations to the chairs of our major ALB colleagues, that would be.
If I could just say, I agree with that very strongly, but you asked me to be on the task and finish group on conflicts of interest, which Malcolm Grant's chairing for NHS England, and I found one, as a non-exec, one of the most valuable things in that is the fact that it's representing the NHS in its widest form, and I think for non-execs, if there are other opportunities like that, it's a very good way of starting to get to know across the rest of the community. That's my aim, and develop a joint understanding.
That's helpful.
I find it really valuable.
Are there any other observations on the action log you'd like to raise? Can I just say the very last one, that the intervention of the board seems to have resulted in a 36% saving in the Ernst & Young contract for costing audits. Is that true? That's what it says. It must be true.
That must be true.
Can I thank the team for doing that, and in particular Monique, who led that revision of the periodicity of those audits, and actually has saved us a not insignificant amount of money. Jim.
So apologies for not having a written report. We'll get one next time again. So this time it was mainly because the situation was very fluid, largely around the reset moment. So just take a couple of minutes to talk about that. We'll talk in more detail later on in private session as well. I'll touch on STP and then a little bit on item 8 as well, on organisational objectives. So on the reset, first of all, there's a long build-up to this point at which we try and get the message across that
Jim,
NHS.
can you just speak up a little because they can't hear
Okay.
the audience?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's been a long build-up to this moment, about this year being the firebreak year of trying to get on top of NHS finances, but doing it in a way that respects progress made from a quality perspective and the need to marry quality and money and performance together. And there's a lot of work went into the build-up. Colleagues between here and NHS England worked really hard at agreeing the document and producing it together. It's understandably been a bit of a shock to the system, and it's been reacted in a kind of mixed way as we would expect. But practically we have seen quite a positive reaction from a financial performance and behaviour point of view already in the early days. There's a long way to go. There's some work going on today and tomorrow to correct some of the misinterpretations and myths and legends that have grown over the last week. So I just wanted to be really clear. We'll not pursue money at the expense of quality or at the price of harm to patients. We've got to work really hard to ensure these things coexist and good decisions are made looking at things in the round. We also need to be very clear in our work that local boards are responsible for their own decision making, their performance, the quality of the services their organisation provides, etc. And it's our job to help them get into that position. So they're the main objectives that have been distorted slightly in the way it's been portrayed over the last few weeks. But a shock, probably a necessary shock and a jolt, reasonable early progress, and I think the important bit is what we do next now over the next couple of months to handle this appropriately. Linked to that, so for those that say this is all about short-term action, I would say on Friday we've got a half a day to unpack the plans from the STP process, which we'll talk about later on the agenda, which is the main opportunity for health systems to look forward into the future and develop real substantial long-term plans. So we mustn't fall into the trap of thinking it's all about the short term. We are actually putting a huge effort into the long-term sustainability of the service as well. And then finally, covered under item 8, there's been, as we've discussed before, quite a complicated change process going on within the organisation. In the last couple of months, a huge effort, not just into getting people appointed into the right positions and settle down as quickly as we can, and that's nearly there, we're getting there, but also to make sure our resources are absolutely ruthlessly targeted against our main priority areas, and that's an ongoing bit of work. We'll expect board to give us good scrutiny and challenge us on that over the coming months, and exec colleagues are really focused on that with the support of Miles and others. So a lot of progress, obviously not there yet, but we're in the very early stages of NHSI, and I think really strong start. So I'm happy to take any questions on any of that.
So we have another opportunity later to ask other questions. Any questions, Jim, in the public part of our agenda? Richard.
First on the financial reset, because it did create a little bit of noise last week. One of the issues that people raised was the question of the excess staffing growth, or whatever the phrase is that we use for that, and whether in deriving that we'd fully taken into account structural changes in organisations. Has that been resolved?
Elizabeth, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So it has been resolved, and it was actually, again, so it was quite clear in the document that we did not take into account a lot of the structural changes. So there's a footnote that's included within the document that clearly determines and explains how the calculations have been made, that this was a line of inquiry that would be useful for boards to look at and for us to look at with regional colleagues. The only exclusions that we had where we knew there was a big material transaction, so we've excluded those organisations. Otherwise, we've been very clear that we haven't, and that's something we'll progress now as we have those discussions.
Just on that point, is there anybody there from HSJ? I've just spoke to HSJ earlier on about, this afternoon we'll put a correction out on this thing. The document was very clear that this is a line of inquiry, and with colleagues in the production of the document, we were very clear that that's what we would do. It's too complicated to track all these things individual, institution by institution. And what we would do at the end of that process would agree with those boards what was reasonable and what wasn't, what was explained through a transaction, what wasn't, etc. And we just started that process. So it was unhelpfully spun as a new target, and used the word fines and stuff like that, which is just completely inaccurate. So that's being corrected today.
Ruth.
I think that clarification, Jim, would be very, very helpful, and I know that it'd be really important too to have some clinical involvement in those decisions, so that we can make sure that, from Cathy and my perspective, we look at the quality impact assessment of those potential changes that are there, so that we do safeguard the quality of patient care.
Absolutely. And we'll be using, wherever we can, the Carter metrics and other benchmarking information, and as a method of operation, wherever possible, using peer review. So we'll find an organisation that looks like it's expanded in a certain area and it's been a bit difficult to control. Wherever possible, we'll link them up with another that's in a similar circumstance and looks more productive, and continue the conversation. And I think one of the hardest things to explain in these last couple of weeks is this isn't a start and finish exercise, it's an ongoing process that we need to go on with for forever. That's the point.
Okay. Can I just, on item 8, which is starred and therefore not discussion, actually say that is a really good read for anybody that talks about the journey from where we've come in a relatively short period of time to now establishing the merged and incoming organisations, the establishment of the team, the establishment of business objectives, the establishment of personal objectives. I've shared all of that with the Permanent Secretary at DH, and I have to say that I think, you know, I'm personally very pleased that the team has done all that work, and I think it's satisfied the department that actually we are now up and running. As with all things, I said this on Tuesday, change is a constant, so we shouldn't be worried if we decide to moderate and change one or two of these things, or indeed take on additional responsibilities in the months ahead, which may well happen.